September 1944. Europe lay shattered by 5 years of total war. The Allied invasion of Normandy that June had broken Hitler's Atlantic Wall and opened a Western front at last. By late summer, the German army was in retreat across France and Belgium. Paris had been liberated, Brussels and Antwerp soon followed. Yet, despite these victories, the Allies faced a daunting truth: the war was not over. The German Wehrmacht, though battered, still fought tenaciously. The rivers and canals of the Netherlands presented formidable natural barriers, and winter loomed on the horizon. Field Marshal Bernard Law Montgomery, commander of the British 21st Army Group, believed he had a plan to bring the conflict in Western Europe to a conclusion. His proposal was bold: to bypass the heavily fortified Siegfried Line by advancing through the Netherlands, seize a series of key bridges, and cross the Rhine into the German heartland. The operation, he argued, could shorten the war by months, perhaps end it by Christmas. This daring plan would become known as Operation Market Garden. By September 1944, the Allied armies were stretched thin. Supply lines ran hundreds of kilometers back to the beaches of Normandy. Fuel shortages were acute, food and ammunition often arrived late. In the south, General George Patton's Third Army pressed into Lorraine, demanding resources. Montgomery, by contrast, sought a single concentrated thrust. His vision was to punch through the German lines with overwhelming force, capture the industrial Ruhr, and force German capitulation. It was a plan that required precision, coordination, and perfect timing. The geography of the Netherlands presented both opportunity and peril. A network of rivers, the Maas, the Waal, and the Lower Rhine, cut across the country. The bridges spanning these rivers were vital. If the Allies could secure them intact, their armored divisions could advance deep into Germany. If they failed, their spearhead would be trapped and isolated. It was a plan that required precision, coordination, and perfect timing. The geography of the Netherlands presented both opportunity and peril. A network of rivers, the Maas, the Waal, and the Lower Rhine, cut across the country. The bridges spanning these rivers were vital. If the Allies could secure them intact, their armored divisions could advance deep into Germany. If they failed, their spearhead would be trapped and isolated. At dawn on September 17, 1944, the Allied air armada filled the skies. Over 2,000 aircraft and gliders carried more than 35,000 men and nearly 5,000 vehicles and artillery pieces. It was the largest airborne operation in military history. The U.S. 101st Airborne Division was assigned to secure the bridges around Eindhoven. The 82nd Airborne Division would capture the crucial crossing over the Waal River at Nijmegen. Farther north, the British 1st Airborne Division, supported by the Polish 1st Independent Parachute Brigade, would land near Arnhem and seize the bridge over the Lower Rhine. For many, the operation began in high spirits. Allied commanders believed German resistance in the Netherlands was crumbling. Intelligence reports, however, were incomplete, and in some cases, dangerously wrong. In reality, 2 SS Panzer divisions, refitting after heavy fighting in Normandy, were stationed near Arnhem. These units, though under strength, were equipped with tanks and experienced officers, a formidable opponent for lightly armed airborne troops. The initial airborne landings were spectacular. C-47 Dakotas and gliders descended through clear skies, scattering parachutes across Dutch fields and meadows. To the south, American paratroopers met sporadic opposition and quickly secured most of their objectives. Local Dutch civilians greeted them with joy, waving flags that had been hidden for years, offering apples, flowers, and cheers of liberation. Yet the optimism was short-lived. The narrowness of the Allied advance created severe congestion. Bridges that should have been captured quickly were sometimes delayed for hours. German engineers blew crossings before they could be taken, forcing detours and repairs. For the British 1st Airborne Division, difficulties began immediately. Their drop zones were several miles from Arnhem Bridge, chosen to avoid German flak positions but at the cost of time and coordination. Only one battalion, under Lieutenant Colonel John Frost, reached the bridge on the first day. The remainder were slowed by enemy resistance and communication breakdowns. For the Dutch population, the sudden arrival of Allied troops brought both hope and horror. In towns like Eindhoven and Nijmegen, church bells rang for the first time since occupation. But in Arnhem, civilians soon found themselves trapped amid the fighting. Entire neighborhoods became battlefields. Families sheltered in cellars as shells shattered their homes. Eyewitness accounts describe streets littered with debris, bodies, and burning vehicles. Many residents risked their lives to assist the paratroopers, providing food, medical care, and information. The Van Lier family, for instance, transformed their home into an improvised aid station for wounded British soldiers. Others helped ferry men across the river during the final evacuation. The cost to civilians was devastating. After the battle, Arnhem was systematically evacuated by German forces. Tens of thousands were forced to flee, leaving their possessions behind. When they returned months later, their city was a ruin. Meanwhile, the British XXX Corps began its advance northward. Its progress depended entirely on a single elevated road, a ribbon of tarmac winding through open fields and canals. German counterattacks repeatedly cut the route, isolating forward elements and delaying reinforcements. Every bridge captured by the airborne troops had to be held until the tanks arrived. For the soldiers along this narrow corridor, the road soon earned its grim sobriquet, Hell's Highway. Columns of Sherman tanks and Bren carriers moved cautiously forward under sniper and artillery fire. Wrecked vehicles clogged the route, forcing engineers to work around the clock to clear paths. At Sun, near Eindhoven, the destruction of a bridge delayed the entire advance for more than 24 hours, a critical setback that allowed German reinforcements to regroup. By September 19, the 82nd Airborne reached Nijmegen but found the main bridge fiercely defended. In a daring assault 2 days later, American paratroopers and British guardsmen launched an amphibious crossing of the Vaal River under heavy fire, a feat of extraordinary courage that captured the bridge intact. However, time was running out for the British at Arnhem. Cut off and surrounded, Frost's battalion fought valiantly from buildings overlooking the river. German tanks and artillery pounded their positions relentlessly. Despite overwhelming odds, they held for 4 days. Radio contact with the outside world was sporadic. One of the final transmissions from Arnhem reportedly read, "Out of ammunition. God save the King." By the time elements of XXX Corps approached within a few kilometers of Arnhem, Frost's men had been overwhelmed or captured. The remainder of the 1st Airborne were pushed into a shrinking defensive pocket near Oosterbeek. Rain, exhaustion, and dwindling supplies made their position untenable. On the night of September 25, Operation Market Garden was officially terminated. Under the cover of darkness and torrential rain, the remnants of the 1st Airborne Division were evacuated across the Rhine in small boats by Canadian engineers. Out of nearly 10,000 British paratroopers who had landed, fewer than 2,000 escaped. The remainder were killed, wounded, or taken prisoner. For the Dutch population, the failure had terrible consequences. Expecting liberation, they had risen in support of the Allies, cutting phone lines and providing intelligence. When the Germans reoccupied the area, they exacted harsh reprisals. The following winter saw severe food shortages throughout the Netherlands. Railway strikes called by the Dutch resistance provoked German blockades, and thousands of civilians starved before the country was finally liberated in May 1945. In the aftermath, the Allied High Command sought to understand why the operation had failed. Historians have since identified multiple causes. Intelligence failures were significant. Reports of German armor near Arnhem were ignored or dismissed as unreliable. Reconnaissance photographs clearly showed tanks in the area, yet planners believed resistance would be light. Logistical overreach crippled the advance. The narrow road limited mobility, and the coordination between airborne and ground forces proved far more complex than anticipated. Weather and timing further hindered operations. Fog and low cloud delayed reinforcement flights, and the extended daylight hours required for glider operations limited flexibility. Strategic overconfidence also played a role. Victories following the Normandy breakout had created an atmosphere of optimism, a belief that German morale was collapsing. In truth, the Wehrmacht still possessed discipline, firepower, and the capacity to regroup quickly. While Market Garden failed to achieve its objectives, it did secure a large portion of the southern Netherlands, including Eindhoven and Nijmegen. Nevertheless, it prolonged the war in Western Europe by several months. The Rhine would not be crossed successfully until March 1945, during Operation Plunder. Operation Market Garden resulted in over 17,000 Allied casualties and comparable German losses. For the Dutch people, more than 10,000 civilians were killed or displaced. Yet amidst the tragedy emerged acts of remarkable courage. Dutch families sheltered Allied airmen despite the threat of execution. Wounded soldiers were hidden in barns and churches. The Dutch underground, though battered, continued to provide vital intelligence. Following the war, the people of Arnhem and Oosterbeek maintained a special bond with the airborne veterans. Each year, schoolchildren lay flowers on the graves of the fallen at the Oosterbeek War Cemetery, a tradition that continues to this day. The rebuilt bridge at Arnhem, once a scene of destruction, now bears the name John Frost Bridge, in honor of the battalion commander who led its defense. Operation Market Garden remains one of the most studied operations of the Second World War. It exemplifies both the ingenuity and the peril of high-risk military strategy. The operation demonstrated the potential of airborne forces but also their vulnerability without rapid reinforcement. It revealed the limitations of intelligence, the dangers of logistical dependence, and the unpredictability of war itself. For those who lived through it, soldiers and civilians alike, the battle left indelible scars. The ruins of Arnhem became a symbol of both Allied courage and human cost. As one British survivor later reflected, "We went in with such high hopes. We did everything that could be done, but the odds were never in our favor." Operation Market Garden was conceived in confidence and executed with immense bravery. Though it failed in its ultimate goal, it stands as a testament to the determination of those who fought and the resilience of those who endured. The Dutch people, whose towns and homes became battlefields, carried the memory of September 1944 through the decades that followed. Their compassion toward the Allied soldiers who came to liberate them remains one of the enduring legacies of the war. Today, the fields of Arnhem and Oosterbeek are peaceful once more. The river that once divided armies now reflects only the passing clouds. Yet every autumn, as veterans and citizens gather in remembrance, the story of Market Garden is retold, not as a tale of defeat, but as a lesson in courage, sacrifice, and the fragile balance between ambition and reality. Operation Market Garden, a bold gamble, a costly failure, and a defining chapter in the history of the Second World War.